Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary folk. I just learned that there was a new feature on the Twitter Spaces where you can have music playing in the background. So I hope I didn't throw it off on the vibes and everything like that. But if you could all do us all a favor by getting this space tweeted out into the sphere so people can come in and join. We've got quite a interesting show today where we're going to be highlighting some of our smaller creators in the ecosystem, featuring our guest Julius, who's already up on stage. We'll be getting to that there in a little bit. But then I'm thankful that I have my co-host and team member, Prometheus, here, and we'll get the show started here momentarily. But if Prometheus, you want to introduce yourself, you can say hi.
Hey there, everyone. Super excited to be here helping Ally out, shine a spotlight on our one-on-one artists. Can't wait to hear Julius' story, but a little background on me. I'm the one and only writer for JPG.store, so most of the writing that you see coming out is coming from me, and we're just getting started. We can't wait to figure out how to, shine as big of a spotlight as we can on our small artists, on our entire NFT space, and also Cardano as general. So super excited for this, and thanks for joining, guys.
Thank you. Yes, you're definitely an amazing writer, and I love seeing that. I have to use a cheat code and try that chat GPT thing to get to your level. But I appreciate it. Julius, welcome to the space. If you want to say a quick hi, how are you?
Hi, Ellie. I'm well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a little bit nervous and a lot excited. So just bear with me if I stumble and as we proceed throughout the evening.
No worries. I'll make sure that it's as chill of a vibe as possible. I'm kind of like the veteran of spaces. I'm not a pro, but I am quite a veteran. So relax,
I know you are.
Enjoy. And then we'll get into it a little bit. I'm going to pin up to the top our spaces so people can retweet it out and get the word out there.
Excellent.
And the fact that I don't believe you're probably quite versed with Twitter Spaces, but do you know how to pin up tweets to the top?
I do. I've actually pinned something to the top right now. I am sharing my screen via StreamYard. So if anybody would like to follow along as I talk about the artwork, there is a link available. And once it's finished, I will send the file to JPG.store and they can upload to their respective spaces as needed. That's totally optional as well.
I need a flame emoji because I think that's super awesome to be able to see what you're talking about and having visual aspect to it, because I think that's one of the things that we're missing in our spaces. We can't just leave the space and watch a video, otherwise then our spaces crash. But being able to actually watch simultaneously, I think is pretty smooth there.
Well, let's hope it pays off.
For sure. Well, thank you. And hello, new faces joining into the room. Welcome to the JPG Creators space. We're highlighting one of our featured smaller creators, Julius, in the space. And we'll get a chance to know who he is, why Cardano, and a number of things. This will be an open kind of forum discussion where we'll actually be interviewing first. And then when the time is ready, we will allow the audience to come up and ask questions to get a chance to know Julius and a little bit more. I'm pretty special because I've known a little bit about Julius for a lot longer than most of you guys. So I'll let Prometheus probably ask some more questions than I would. But before we dive into it, make sure that stuff is tweeted up the top and making sure that people are tweeting it out.
Awesome.
And then also, once again, just before we go ahead and get started, Julius, if you just can tell everyone where to find that live stream, I'm also going to be following along. I can't wait to actually check it out.
All right. I've pinned it to the top of my profile, and I see it is already been pinned to the top of this conversation. I am streaming live on Twitter, my Facebook page, my Facebook profile, and my LinkedIn. And I'll probably upload to YouTube a bit later. But as mentioned, as soon as the interview is done, I will be uploading it to Dropbox and sending it to the JPG.store team, and they can upload it to whichever platforms they see fit.
Excellent. Yep, I just got my live stream up, so I'm watching now, and I think this is a great feature. This is actually the first space I've done with one of the artists doing a live stream like this, so I'm loving it.
Awesome. What I want to try and do is just see if I can get the Twitter space open on my desktop browser, because that usually has a transcribing effect, but I see it's not working as I'd like to, but nonetheless, I'm just going to leave it on the JPG.store account for the time being, and then we'll take it from there.
I think this is super cool. I'm going to be definitely taking notes for our next spaces. This is a great comeback from these spaces. It's been like 2 months since we've hosted one, so this is a great.
Yeah, I remember that I was tuned into Stiliat, I believe was the artist, and he's just exceptional. I was introduced to his work during that space, and I've just been following him on Twitter, on Instagram, and it's just such a lovely addition to my feed. He's a very talented individual.
Yeah, I've been watching him from the beginning, early days of Cardano, and seeing him evolve. He's a brilliant kid for sure. I kind of say that for a lot of people though, because most of the people in the ecosystem are younger than me and doing a better job on a lot of things than I can, which is great, which gave me actually more of a boost. I think that in 2023, I will be diving into some learning things. I've got some books on standby for reading material, and probably might get into like the engineer aspect and try learning some coding myself. But I digress. This is supposed to be all about you. So Julius, as we're watching along, could you give us a little insight as to who you are and why you kind of like, what kind of things you create and why you create?
All right, of course. I think it's important to mention that I've come to the realization that my role in society is that of the mirror. So when I work with people, when I have my photography sessions, I'm just trying to reflect back to the world what people see in themselves. So you talking about you and your goals moving forward is completely on brand for me. And I encourage you to keep on believing and progressing and excelling as you always have. To just quickly shift the conversation a little bit about me and my history. Full disclosure, I am an introvert, so talking about myself does not really come very naturally to me. But luckily, thanks to the Cardano ecosystem, especially the guys over at Cardano over coffee, I've had a little bit of practice, so the jitters are getting more manageable as I do these sort of talks. I'm going to start off with my formal or academic training, although my creative career maybe started a decade and a half before that. But yeah, let me just give you the highlights, and if there are any questions from you or Prometheus or anybody else, I am happy to answer them when we get to that point in the interview. So I finished high school in South Africa in 2003. From there, I went to an institution called CTI, which is the Computer Training Institute, where I got an international diploma in IT engineering. I've always had a phenomenal aptitude for computers and technology, and I just felt straight out of high school having this credential would put me ahead, in terms of what I could offer potential clients or employers as I got older. That was a great move. I got my first job 8 months in, and I hated it. I was stuck in a corporate position. I was stuck in traffic 2.5 hours, 3 hours a day, and it didn't feel like what I wanted to do at the age of 18, 19. So the employers at that stage sort of like realized that I was underperforming and called me in for like a little meeting. And I just instinctively mentioned that I'm not feeling it and that I would be resigning. And in the meeting, they were like, oh, well, if you're going to resign, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I really like music. And that is sort of like how it started. I got home that evening, had to explain the situation to my dad. who had already invested a lot in my education, but he sort of like just understood. He was like, you know what, you're only young ones, and I understand that you have the desire to have a bit of a student life. And through a series of fortunate accidents, I found a film school in Johannesburg called AFTA, which is currently ranked as one of the top 6 film institutions in the world. So I started off at AFTA my first year as a music student, where I studied music for stage, but also composing for screen. And I did pretty well. At the end of that first year, I had assisted a third-year production where we won Best Stage Production for that year, and we did Ray Charles tribute called A Moment with Ray. It was a beautiful experience. I was part of an actual jazz ensemble playing bass guitar. We had 3 guitarists, 2 pianists, a lot of backup vocals, and Mahlatsi, who was a South African musician at that time, in the lead, and he just nailed it. He did a phenomenal job. So even, with all those positive experiences, that little accolade, my sponsors at the time were like, look, there is absolutely no job security in front of the camera. So we need you to move behind the camera, or we are going to stop paying for your studies. So that is kind of like how I ended up doing photography. I actually majored in producing for narrative film, and later on for studio as well. And my second major was in cinematography, and I had a little bit of work in script writing as well. And that is how my fundamental studies of the visual art form started. It was an additional 3 years, so I studied 4 years in total with some of South Africa's leading artists. I mean, the people that graduated the same year as I did are currently producing Netflix shows, are working on super high profile motion picture films. I've got a friend, Kelly Christophers, who's been part of both Spider-Man animated universe films, and she's also done some work for, I think it's Kingsman. And then I have another fellow graduate at Etabile who's produced at least 2 films and a series in South Africa, and another one, Paul Bass, who just finished a Netflix series which is currently the first Afrikaans series on Netflix. So once film school finished up, I was headhunted by an international sports production company. For those of you who were following the World Cup these last couple of weeks, you may recall that we had the World Cup in South Africa in 2001, 2009, 2010. I'm just opening up on my page, on the screen share, my About page that has more details about this, so that you can follow along. So yeah, I was headhunted by an international sports production company. I produced for Brazil for the Confederations Cup, which is sort of like the dress rehearsal for the World Cup. I toured with them and their media. And I believe during that production cycle, we reached a national record for the Brazilian broadcaster with the most viewers on a Saturday morning. The next year, we had the actual tournament for which I was recruited by ZDF, which is the largest broadcaster in Europe. They're a German broadcaster. And I mean, they just went all out for their coverage of the World Cup. I think they got 2 747s filled with crew and equipment, and they flew everybody from Germany to Cape Town. They had a production crew of 600 plus people, 300 of which were based in Johannesburg for the IBC, the International Broadcast Compound, and another 300 journalists rotating with the athletes and the games as they were happening. So that was essentially my introduction to the world of international broadcast. That was my first first high-profile get out of film school, and it just set the bar for me in terms of what I wanted to do once that was over. So 2010, I think around June, July, the World Cup wrapped up, and with that, the work sort of dried up as well. Which brings me to how I started like doing photography on a semi-professional basis. And what I mean by that is I was generating revenue by taking photos. And it was a once in a lifetime experience or opportunity where we were working with eThekwini municipality, and we were building a graphic information system of their electrical network. So easier way to say that is we were building a Google Earth-like environment of their electrical grid, where I had developed systems and trained up teams to go out in the field, take photos of all the low voltage and medium voltage equipment, do an inspection via an electronic form on an iPad, which was state of the art at that stage. And then we had to capture GPS coordinates that were accurate to between 1 and 5 centimeters. That's about 2 inches in the imperial system. So that was my baby for 2.5 years. We captured around 30 million photos, and we audited about 9 items for the municipality. It was super fulfilling, but also took its toll. My offices were open 16 hours a day, 6 days a week for 2.5 years. And by the end of it, I ended up in hospital with burnout and stress-related issues. So much so that I was under the impression that I might have cancer. So here I am, 25, 26, in hospital, just finished up this major project and not even sure if I will be alive in a year's time. And I'm not sure how many of you have ever had an experience like that, but when you are in that hospital room and you start asking those questions, you know, the answers that you get will surprise you more often than not. The questions that I was asking myself is, am I happy? If I were to leave this world in a year's time, would I have done sort of like what I wanted to? And the answer to both of those was no. So, you know, my eternal gratitude to the universe or a higher power for sparing me, because it allowed me to make some serious changes in my life, part of which was to get out of the corporate environment and to pursue my creative ambitions in a more full-time capacity. But the work came a bit later. You know, I just finished a big project and I needed to take some time for myself. And a long-time dream of mine had been to go to Ibiza, which is a small little island off the coast of Spain. It's in a section known as the Balearic Islands. So you've got Ibiza, Formentera, and Mallorca. And, you know, what I found out later on, during the summer months, the European summer months, that little area, that the Balearic area, becomes the richest area in Europe per square kilometer, which is pretty amazing. You know, if you go to Ibiza during the peak season, it rotates anything from 1 million to 1.2 million tourists a week. And while on the island, the people have the opportunity to explore almost absolutely everything in terms of escapism. You know, people go to Ibiza to escape. They want to escape boring jobs. They want to escape dull relationships. They want to unplug themselves from any responsibility. And, you know, the island just caters perfectly for people like that. And that's also why I went. I went to Ibiza essentially because I wanted to escape the expectations my family had for me. I wanted to, you know, have a new chapter or a new beginning where there was nobody that knew me or knew what I had done. It was just an opportunity for me to start afresh, but also to do the things that I'm passionate about and curious in. So I bought a ticket to Ibiza, and it was supposed to be a 2-week holiday. And during those 2 weeks, I had many fortunate experiences that allowed me access to these super clubs in a wonderful capacity. So the arrangement that I had with the people at that stage is that they would not pay me. but they would give me access to all the clubs. They would give me accommodation, and they would give me fuel and a car to get around the island as needed, which was exactly what I was looking for. So my 2-week holiday turned into like this beautiful 3-month photography assignment. And at the end of the 3-month period, which is when my visa expired, very, very reluctantly, I had to leave the island sort of like mid-season, because an average season on Ibiza is like 120 to 140 days. So that's 3 to, let's say, 4 or 5 months nowadays. Every season it's getting longer. But I managed to stay in contact with the people that I was working with. And they helped me to get a visa, so they sponsored a visa residency for me via Germany, which meant that I had to live in Germany for the majority of the stay. So I started off with Ibiza 7 months, Ibiza 5 months, Germany 7 months, Ibiza 5 months, and then Germany for the last leg. And during that first 4-year period, I got to cover 1,000 events on the island and also in Germany. One of the most notable events in Germany that I covered was a festival called the Mega Neuntinger Festival, which had all our favorite 90s artists sort of like do live performances, or their first live performances in nearly a decade. So these were artists like Two Unlimited, like Hadaway, Wickfield, Right Said Fred, Snap, and it was just a wonderful experience. And I love being up close with these high-profile artists, not just for the spectacle of it, but also for the lessons learned. These were people whose careers blew up in the peak of like the 90s, before streaming, before the internet. They were signed with huge labels, and they got a lot of benefit of how their contracts were structured in terms of royalties, in terms of music videos and concerts. So not only had these guys already done or achieved the highest of the highs, they now have 2 decades of experience and maturity to share and impart with people like me who have questions about that field. So long story short, I finished up my tenure with the German company in 2016, at which time I had finished about my 1,000th event for them, but also had the prestigious honor of being the official photographer for the International DJ Awards. And for anybody who is familiar with electronic music, they'd know that the International DJ Awards is the equivalent of the Oscars for EDM and techno and rave, or whatever you want to call it. So it was definitely like a wonderful experience for me. From 2017 onwards, 2017, 18, and 19, I felt like I had achieved enough on the island and had made enough of a name for myself that I could operate independently, which is what happened. So 2016, 2017, 18, and 19, I went back to the island. And instead of covering every super club event that I could, I focused on those events that didn't have like big labels behind them, but were also extremely prestigious. One of those events is La Troya, which is one of the world's longest running LGBTQ events. I had been their photographer in official capacity for about 3 years. And another one that I covered was called Vintage, which is at Leo. Leo in Ibiza is on the port. It's very high end. It's essentially a restaurant with a bit of show and cabaret. And at 12 o'clock after dinner, after the show, there's a little team that comes in, packs away all the tables, and it turns into this beautiful nightclub. And on Friday nights, they had the biggest or the most popular Spanish DJ there called Sebastian Gamboa. And I was his official photographer for about 2 seasons as well. So, yeah, that is my Ibiza experience in summary. Like, it's really hard to go in detail in a 5-minute period. the next year, I think my last season in Ibiza was 2019. And then obviously from 2020, we had COVID, we had lockdown, and we had all these events, all these, like everything just shut down. So my entire industry, of which I'd been a part of for the last 7-8 years, just shut down overnight. And because of that, I had to pivot in order to survive. So since then, instead of promoting myself as a photographer, I have rebranded as a fine artist and content creator, which pretty much meant that I was going to take my favorite photos, make them available to collectors, and then also in the content creation, I would continue doing photography, but also add additional elements like videography and web design. So that's it for the intro. I see that I've got a question.
I was going to try to give you a little bit of a breather there because it was quite the extensive story. It was actually pretty awesome to hear your world travels. And I did see that someone came up and probably had a question to pose in regards to one of your travels.
Sure.
And I'll let Prometheus speak as well. Or, they're welcome to chime in between while you're needing to breathe a little bit in between storytelling.
Please, yeah. I welcome it. Any questions, Prometheus?
Well, what really stands out to me, especially when I look at like your work and everything, I'm like flipping through your photography NFTs, is like you can just see so much emotion. Like you're capturing live moments, and with your story and everything, like you're out there, you're at these clubs, you're at where like so much life is happening, and you're kind of capturing it through your lens. And what I just like really like resonate with your story is you were from schooling destined to be behind a computer, behind a screen with your, computer and information, like the tech degree. But then you started getting like almost like pulled into this whole world that just feels, so alive. So, and now, you're kind of spreading that. You said that you're a mirror. You're kind of there and you're like, reflecting these experiences you have. And now I get to, see some of this time that you're talking about in Ibiza. So what I love about this whole space with NFTs, speaking with artists like you, is it's just inspiration for like the hearts that are, just seeking it. Like I've done my own fair share of travels and I just completely get where you're coming from, but it's such a wildly different experience. So I really hope that like when we do these spaces, people like are thinking and, they're reevaluating their life. They're thinking like, sure, I went to school for this, but look at this world that's out there. And when I started the whole NFT journey myself, it really got me thinking that like, on our website, we always say we support creators, and we use the word creators so much more than artists. And that's because I think everyone is a creator. We're all creating our own life. And when you or I, when I went to JPG.store to work, or, you went to do photography and went away from, computer science and all that, it's kind of like that's the time that, we put our hands on the wheel of our own life and we actually take control. So I just see that in your work. I love what you're doing. And I guess question wise is what do you think would be something that you could say to people, especially like young people right now that feel a little bit lost? Like the world is changing so fast that they can't really rely on the old wisdom nowadays. It's a completely new world in the past like 3 or 4 years. So what kind of wisdom would you think or say to someone that's considering maybe exploring more of this creative side of themselves?
Well, I'm going to answer that with sort of like my golden nugget or my biggest takeaway from spending time on the island. So in my capacity which was essentially a photojournalist, I got to connect with all the different pockets of Ibiza. Yes, I did a lot of nightlife and event photography, but I also got to connect with the restaurants and the yoga retreats and the people that own the properties that you rent while you go there. And, what I have come to learn is like there's a really small pocket of people on the island that don't need to escape. And the reason they don't need to escape is because they've built lives that they are content with. They've built lives that they don't need to escape from. So my advice to people in general is to try and pursue that, because if you build a life that you enjoy, that you don't need to escape from, it's just going to have so many benefits to you health-wise, emotionally, and so forth. As for creatives, I would encourage you to just go ahead and do it. The younger you are, the less responsibilities you have, the easier it is for you to take sort of like these risks. Because as you get older, especially for men, you get more responsibility. There's a partner, eventually there's kids or a business or what have you. And then it becomes more difficult to take these chances. So I would encourage creatives to follow their intuition and go for it. You know, there's absolutely, like, there are going to be some obstacles. There are going to be things that you feel that hold you back or limit you. But those obstacles are there to strengthen you. They are there to help you progress, to help you grow. And, you know, you just have to persevere. I think if I would redo some of it, I would maybe try to have a second income, you know, or an additional income while doing it, because that would have spared me a lot of grief and anxiety. I've been bootstrapping my career for like the last decade or so. Whereas if there was an additional side hustle or something that I could have done, it would have relieved a lot of pressure for me. But in the end, I'm thankful for those experiences because they brought me to where I am today. So that's a very long answer. I hope it helped.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm actually looking at one of your pieces and it just felt perfect right now. It's called Follow Your Heart. It's a dancer with a lot of purple lighting and there's words in the background that it all looks, you know, like really nicely framed. But one of the quotes actually really got to me, and it says, creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes, and art is knowing which ones to keep. And that's kind of, I just couldn't get that in my head when you were talking, because that's kind of the way I see life as well. Like, sure, you're going to go out there, you're going to try things and you're going to mess up and things aren't going to go the way that you think sometimes. But there's lessons in all of these moments. And the real skill is kind of like what you're saying, is that the word I use is anti-fragility. Like when something goes wrong, you come back stronger, and it's about knowing which ones to keep. So like you said, like maybe having that second income would have been nice. And I love that, because when I went and did my travels right after college, like I kind of did a similar thing as you know, just going around, and I was, you know, volunteering at a research institute helping sea turtles just so I could get free food and free stay. But I learned so much from that. Then I did the same thing with like a vegan chef. So the thing is that it really is like life is just out there. There's ways to do it, but there's also a million excuses, but there's a million clever ways to like really get what you want. So what I love that your message with this is, it's like really just kind of think about the way you want to go for, and, you know, just kind of like, it's all right to just start, you know? So,
yeah. And it's okay to fail as well, you know, fail forward. Failure is such an important part of the process, because you can use that failure as a stepping stone to the next opportunity.
Exactly. In fact, a lot of the failures might lead you to your biggest discovery ever. Like if my previous work didn't go the way it did, I wouldn't be here right now. And I would repeat every moment of my life just to get to this place where I work with, you know, NFTs, artists, JPG.store, Cardano. And like you were saying, it's all about kind of aligning your life, your work, your meaning, your purpose, so that you don't feel like you have to kind of escape, right? Correct. So, and I love that, because like I'm looking at your photos and everything, and there's just so much life and movement and all that. So I guess with that, what we were talking about, mistakes and kind of, you know, pushing yourselves, can you go ahead and, if you already touched on it, just repeat, like, how did you actually enter the NFT game? You know, like, it's such a different world, especially for creators. And we're trying to make sure that photographers, creators, artists know that this exists. So what brought you in?
To be honest, I've been dreaming about something like NFTs ever since I was in my early teens. I had a phenomenal art teacher, and I was an art student in high school. She sadly passed. But during that like while she was still around, she allowed me to create sort of like my own art subject with my computer. So she was like, okay, you can do your art assignments on a computer. And I was just so thrilled with that because firstly, she had the intuition to understand that this is where art is going. And she trusted my judgment enough and empowered me to say, okay, do it, go ahead. So for me, working with fellow creatives at a young age, I mean, I have some wonderful high school friends who are super successful painters and artists in South Africa these days. And they're doing well, but it's not very scalable. You only have one piece of art and maybe you can do a digital version of it. But for me, when creating my artwork at that stage, I wanted to capitalize on the scalability of it all from the get-go. I have had an aptitude for computers like since before I even started school. I remember going to grade 1 in South Africa, and already we had a computer at home, and I could operate DOS and the command line interface. And I gradually grew with the technology as it expanded, all the way from DOS to Windows 3.1, 95, 98, 2000 ME, all the way to what we've got today. So when the NFT space came around, like I initially started off on the Ethereum blockchain, it was just like a little reminder, or, like intuitively my spirit, my body just vibrated saying, this is what you've been looking for. This is sort of like the gap that you've anticipated. And ever since I saw that functionality, I just dug deeper and deeper. And, to an extent, I can thank lockdown and COVID for that, because I wasn't on assignment every day. I wasn't working 18 hours a day. I could just spend time in front of my computer, do the research, learn how to code, learn how to develop. And that's brought me to where I am today. As for Cardano and why I'm developing on that platform, a lot of that has to do with me being South African and the ecosystem just being way more accessible for somebody who was not making a living in US dollars or euros. In South Africa, the local currency is the South African rand. And because of where Cardano started off and where it's at, it's a lot more accessible to people like me and people with that South African income during lockdown. So that was like one of the really big attractions for me. And as I started building and participating in the community, I really just felt at home. I felt like I had found people with similar interests, similar beliefs. And, by creating a space for me to shine my internal light, I inadvertently gave permission to others to share or shine their lights. And it's just that constant back and forth of inspiration, of people just putting themselves out there, sharing what they've discovered, putting their message of people who are willing to listen. And that experience in itself is priceless. Like there's no amount of money or ADA or Ethereum or whatever that can buy that for you. And that's something that I'm very focused on. I would much rather have a priceless experience and grow as a result of it than just chase a number, because I don't know, that's what people do nowadays, I suppose.
I hate to interrupt, but I saw that One Trippy Planet had came up and might have a question or comment to
Sure.
So I wanted to give them an opportunity. It's been a while since I've seen them, so hello, One Trippy. How are you? If you can come up. You're still on mute.
And this is also an open invite for anyone that, if any of this relates to you, or if you have questions for Julius, or if you're looking at his work and want to talk about it, come on in. Because the cool thing is that it's a bear market right now, and you guys have a chance to speak and talk with us right now, because this is not always going to be the case. When things pick up, eventually, because it is cyclical, we're going to be crammed to the point that we're going to be turning away everyone. So yeah, feel free to come in and talk whenever, guys.
All right.
Yep, go ahead, Julius.
Shall I continue? I think what I've set aside for the next segment of this conversation is just to talk about my one-of-one collection that is currently available on JPG.store. Seeing as we have Follow Your Heart on the screen, I can talk about that. And then I can just go through each piece, sort of like piece by piece or step by step. And after every piece, I can just open up the floor for questions and, elaborate on whatever questions the audience may have.
I love it. I think that's a great idea. Let's do it.
All right. So I am, as mentioned at the beginning of this call or of the space, there is a link pinned to the top of the space where I am sharing my computer screen. And for those of you who'd like to, you can click on that link and follow what I am talking about visually, sort of like as we have this space. So on my screen right now, there is a piece called Follow Your Heart. We have an acrobat on a stage with like a really interesting platform. And what's important to note about this photo is its location. This is taken in a super club called Heart, and it was owned by Cirque du Soleil, which meant that it was the mecca for the creative industry or the artist sector in Ibiza for the duration of its run. And this photo, if I'm not mistaken, was taken in 2016. It was when I was at my absolute busiest on the island, averaging 4 hours of sleep for about 6 months. And during that season, I easily covered 450 events. And what's so lovely about this photo is the recognition that I got from the community. Heart reached out to me directly and said, Julius, we really like what you're doing. We want you to come to our establishment. We are hosting an event with One Drop, which was founded by the founder of Cirque du Soleil as well. And we want you to be our photographer for this high-profile event. I took tons of photos throughout that evening, but this one has just always been an absolute favorite of mine, mostly because of, everything that you see in this photo was captured by the camera. There was no superimposition of quotes in Photoshop. This was the image in the club, and I just managed to capture it as is. And the ethos of Heart Ibiza was follow your heart. And it just came through in absolutely everything that they did. So similar to Leo, they also had a show and dinner first. The doors opened up at 8 o'clock. And during the dinner segment, they had all these beautiful shows. But what was so amazing about this location was the way that it was built. The walls of the establishment were effectively like big film screens, and they had installed a couple of dozen projectors in this space, which made the restaurant into one big screen. And it was constantly changing and interactive. And it was just such a beautiful experience for somebody like me who understands the technological input of a feat like that, and how difficult and what a challenge it must be to set up something like that. So, yeah, I definitely resonate with that message of follow your heart, which is why the piece is named that. And just to be in the presence of those artists that came before us, even if it's only in the written word, is such an honor and a privilege. We have Leonardo da Vinci, we have Scott Adams, Salvador Dali, who's also a Spanish artist, Vincent van Gogh. So, I mean, I couldn't ask to be in better company. Yeah. So before I get on to the next piece, which would most likely be White Electric Wind, do we have any questions about Follow Your Heart?
I'm just like enamored by it for sure. And I just wanted to chime in, as I do know that we are gearing up for the holiday season. If I could ask, maybe what are your top 3 favorite captures that you've had that are listed up on JPG Store at the moment?
So Follow Your Heart is definitely one of them. The next one that I'm talking about is called White Electric Wind, which has already been collected by a JPEG collector. And then the third one, it's probably going to be Restless, which I can list, which I'll be sharing on my screen right now. So Restless is a photo of a dancer in a super club where they have like orange, yellow, and red lasers and neon lights, and the dancer in costume is in silhouette. And I just love this image because it's very high energy and reminds me of so many beautiful moments and interactions I've had on the island.
And with this kind of art, I love it because like it immediately resonates with almost any concert or show I've been going to lately. But the cool thing about like just to rewind a bit, I have always wanted to jump into the space of photography. I love the idea. I've never saved up for a camera, and I think NFTs are the first like actual big push in my life to actually, you know, explore this creative side of me. And seeing your work is one of those nudges like, hey, like this resonates with you, like get out there and try it. And this is one of those pieces that's like, you've seen these moments that you wish you had a photo of. And that's kind of what I love, because when I think about like a photographer, and please, like, I'd love to hear your mind on this too, but I always think it's like, it's like your passion and your challenge just to be an eye, to be mindful, to be in the moment, and to be, you know, looking. And when I'm out on a walk, wherever I am, I'm either in my head or I'm actually on that walk in that moment looking around. And I think that photography would actually train myself, my mind and my eye to be a little bit more present. So that's kind of what I see in these moments, because there's so much movement that you chose. Like, we're talking about a snapshot of a time to capture, and you captured it. So that's kind of just what I'm picking up when I'm like following along with what you're saying. So I love it too. It's just one of those nudges that's like, hey, I got to go get one of these cameras, or, you know, just might as well start on my phone. There's nothing stopping us nowadays, you know?
Yeah. You've inadvertently touched on something that is foundational to my photography and sort of like where my photographic journey started. And this has to do with the weekend on which I actually received or my Canon 5D arrived. So I had ordered it. It arrived on a Thursday, and on a Friday I found myself in Ikopo in KwaZulu-Natal at a place called the Buddhist Retreat Center. And I had ended up there as part of my rehabilitation, you know, because of the stress-related issues and stuff. And the first workshop that we had that weekend was called Photography as Meditation. And the core premise of this retreat was to use photography to help you cultivate a sense of mindfulness and being present. Because in sort of like the Eastern philosophies, they explain disorders or illnesses like depression and anxiety as illnesses or time illnesses, meaning that depression is a result of spending too much time in the past, and anxiety is the end result of spending too much time in the future. And by practicing something like meditation or photography as meditation, you willfully bring yourself, your consciousness, your energy back to the present moment, and you just develop or cultivate a discipline of being here now. You know, because that's where everything is happening. Everything is happening right now. It's not happening in 5 minutes from now. It's not happening yesterday. These are all constructs of the mind, things that we, you know, create to explain our experience. But wherever you are, whenever anything is happening, it's happening right now. And something like photography lends itself perfectly to cultivating mindfulness. So much so that one of the workshops that I'm currently developing while in the US is a workshop called Photography as Meditation, which I will be offering both in person and online. And we can talk about that in more detail at a later stage.
Julius, I love it. This is exactly like the way that my mind works. This is what I'm thinking about all the time, because there is no past, you know, those are memories. And the more we think about it, the more we're changing that. In the future, it's all, you know, it's anxiety. It doesn't exist yet. So it's like photography, the present, the now, that's the only thing that really is right now. And, you know, I could go way crunchier and a little bit more hippie, but I'm going to hold it back a little bit, keep it on the art side. But this is exactly what's kind of pulled me into, you know, wanting to explore photography. And that's why, like, this is my first time co-hosting a space. And thank you so much, Ally and JPG Store. But this is exactly what pulls me into the NFT scene and to want to work with artists and creators and do these spaces, because, you know, I could find your art, your NFTs on the site, but then there's so many more layers added to it when I actually get a chance to hear what you have to say about your own work. And, you know, you've got your own descriptions on the pieces on your website, which I love. And that's actually what I love about NFTs, is that you can include that with the metadata as well. And you say that you were involved in music. So hopefully in your future, we get to see these multimedia, like, oh, yeah, just checking. Am I still on?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay, cool. My phone just glitched. But yeah, but hopefully in the future, you know, you've got so many disciplines, from computer science to music to art and the photography, that NFTs kind of give you this blank canvas, this new form of media that you can just express your creativity in so many ways. And like you said, it's all about, you know, just sharing the work. So hopefully more people can, you know, be interested and inspired by this. Yeah. So yeah, I love it. Keep on going.
A big topic of discussion in the art world, and I think particularly in the NFT world, is art as utility. And I'm a firm believer that, yes, art in itself is its own utility. But for me, when I create my artwork, whether it's NFT or a physical piece, the intention behind it is to help you cultivate a sense of mindfulness. So the objective is not to always be in the present, you know, because we have to go 5 minutes or 5 months in the future and plan that dinner or anticipate, you know, that meeting. But the objective is just to visit, you know, go to your January schedule for next year and schedule that meeting, spend a minute there, but come back to the present, you know, go back in time to a fond memory of your family while you were growing up, but come back to the present. And this is what I try to, or this is the utility that I'm trying to add with my physical work, is it's something that you can put up either in your physical space. And I also make downloadable, unlockable downloads available of my NFTs once people purchase. And with these unlockable downloads, they get a version of the NFT for their smartwatch, for their smartphone, for their laptop, so that, you know, as they go through their day, there is a physical reminder in their space to just be in the present. Give yourself permission to go visit the past for a second, to go visit the future for a second, but always come back, because right now, right here, that is where all the important things are happening. So seeing as we have Restless on the screen right now, I think I'll quickly just talk about this piece. I have already mentioned a little bit about it.
Yeah, before you dive into that, I think that Kelpie had a question actually looking at the screen. Kelpie, hey. I see that your hand is raised.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me on.
Of course.
Julius, this is actually a question for you. It's a two-part question. A, what's it like being an investment banker? And B, would you write me a recommendation?
Well, Kelby, I don't believe that I'm an investment banker. I've been investing in myself and my career, but I don't believe that I've mentioned that I'm an investment banker, unless I misspoke. And as for the letter of recommendation, I'd be inclined to do so, but I'd want to have coffee with you first and sort of like see what it is you need it for and how I could best write that letter for you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before I start?
No, you're good to go. I definitely want to hear the story about Restless, as my legs are asleep due to a kitten in my lap. I would feel quite restless here in a little bit, but I'd love to hear your story.
Okay. So this photo was taken in Privilege. And Privilege for the longest time was the Guinness Book record holder for the world's largest indoor club. So at full capacity, it can take 16,000 people. And this particular photo was taken at an event called Resistance. So I would imagine that the American listeners in this call are familiar with Ultra. Ultra is sort of like an EDM festival that they have, I think, their annual event in Miami. It's like a whole weekend. But from there, the festival travels to a new country or a different country every month. So they have Argentina, they have Croatia, they've gone to South Africa. They have one in Ibiza. I think their Ultra's closing party is usually in Ibiza during August. So this event is called Resistance, which is sort of like the darker, more underground version of the EDM scene. And it is a lot less glammy, poppy, like chewing gum production, and it's a lot more curated for emotional experience. So depending on who the headliner for that evening is, they are briefed on a specific energy that they want the audience to experience. And it's very avant-garde. It's not going to be like, oh, I know the song. It's more like, oh my goodness, I can't believe what the song is making me feel, what it is awakening within me. So that's sort of like the stage or the setting of this photo. But what I want to draw your attention to is the actual performer in the frame. So the Ultra and Resistance festivals have their own squad of dancers that travel with them, and they are known as the Ultra Angels. And I've worked with Katie. She's the owner of Ultra Angels for quite some time, and she actually was kind enough to give me access and press accreditation for this event, not knowing, like neither one of us knowing what the end result of the photos would be. But because of my background in photography and lighting and film and technology, it just lent itself perfectly to this space. And what we're seeing here is the beginning stages of a coordinated dance from the dancers. So this is literally the dancer had just climbed onto the podium out of sort of like in the shadows. And then when the music excels or like builds up to a climax, the lights go on, and out of nowhere, you just see this entire troupe of dancers in costume, ready to go. And then the beat drops. And as it drops, they just let go, because this is what they have been living for. This is what they've been preparing for all of their lives. So many of these dancers have been dancing professionally for like most of their life, and they get the opportunity to share their energy with the audience, which is something that I've typically only experienced in Spain. Is the dancers are there to feed the audience. People feed off their energy. And this energy, this photo is just such a wonderful example of what that energy looks like, what it evokes in sort of like the human psyche. It's very attractive. There's a little bit of darkness, but it's also, abstract. There's a little bit of uncertainty. That balance between the light and the dark, that tension, just lends itself perfectly to the camera. And because of that sensation, of that emotion, I had no other choice but to call this piece Restless, because, this is what everybody is experiencing at this moment in the festival.
I love it. And that kind of touches on the whole thing you're saying, that it's all about that moment. It's not about recognizing the song. It's not about, being somewhere else at the time. The whole it's an experience. And I don't know if anybody in the audience that's listening has been to Ibiza. I haven't yet, but it's on my list because it is no joke. Like, a lot of people, they kind of get their ideas about what these places are and what it all is. But the thing is, you make it what you want it to be. And that's why these EDM shows, they're called shows. It's not a concert. Concerts are more about viewing. A show, it's more kind of like, it's the whole experience. That's why the lights, the dancers, the music, all of it's like this huge, it's production. So with Restless, I mean, like, I think you captured it. And like, what an experience like this being in Ibiza for this amount of time must have been for your artistic, and also just like experiential like career. Because one thing about these scenes is that it is alive. Like you're saying, it's life. There's a little bit of darkness. There's excitement. There's like living in the present. So I love it. I mean, like the fact that you were capturing that and now you're here with us today, sharing this experience, whether it was like, a few years ago or just yesterday, it's like these NFTs are going to be around for ages. And as your career progresses, like this is something that you're going to look back on, and you capture that moment, which goes back to the whole beauty of the mindfulness of photography. Like that's why I've been trying to take more pictures on my cell phone, just being in the present, having a memory to look at, but also just remembering to be mindful to experience it,
Definitely. Before I go on to the next piece, have we got any questions from the audience?
I didn't have any questions. I'm just actually marveling. My favorite piece actually that I've been a fan of has actually been Deeper. And I would love to learn a little bit about the story behind that one.
All right. So let me do Deeper, and then I can come back to White Electric Wind. How's that sound?
Sounds perfect because I know who owns the White Electric Wind.
I know you do, and I'm eternally thankful to them. It's been such a godsend. So I'm very thankful for them. All right. So the image Deeper is on the screen right now. It's like a bluish image. And what it is, it's a photo of a friend of mine who's a very famous acrobat in Ibiza. And this photo was taken in Cape Town while they were visiting, maybe like once I'd already been friends with them for 4 or 5 years. The acrobat's name is Javi or Javier. And this event in Cape Town was the first time that I got to see him perform at night. Usually he's an acrobat for La Troya, which is the LGBTQ event that I mentioned earlier. And that happened in Hart for a very long time. And those events typically only start at like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning and finish at 7 o'clock. So, this photo is about my relationship with Harvey, where I had spent so much time with him, backstage on the island, gotten to know his style of performance, and, just to appreciate what a talented performer he is. And then, by chance, being able to see his show during the day and see how his persona, how he presents himself, how it all just sort of like changes on a dime. And my takeaway from that experience is that people, no matter how well you know them or how well you think you know them, they always have the ability to surprise you, to bring out something from their toolkit that we didn't expect. And I just thought that was so beautiful. It's a reminder of the dynamic nature of humanity and our relationships. And I just felt like it was such a beautiful image to share with the rest of the world. I do have the original raw image of this photo on my computer somewhere, but what's important to note is that what you're seeing on the screen right now is pretty much exactly what was captured in camera. I didn't have to do a lot of grading or a lot of touching up. This is Javier at his finest, doing what he does best. And he's hanging from a crane in sort of like a silk cover, like a piece of silk sheet, and just doing different movements while hanging above a crowd in Cape Town during the summer evenings. And that is why I called the piece Deeper. It's an invitation to all of us to look past the surface and acknowledge the complexity of those in our lives, of those around us. And by doing so, there's a lot of beauty to be experienced.
I love that. And it makes me want to actually like try and attempt to do something like that. But I love the story, the fact that also you mentioned there was like minimal editing to it, to this specific piece. And I think that will segue itself well into a next question after you dive into the story of the next piece. But I will allow Prometheus, if you had any questions about this piece first before he dives into Electric Wind.
Well, the thing that blows my mind is that you've been, a photographer, you've been involved with the FIFA World Cup. You've been involved with such big events, massive kind of industry kind of opportunities to photograph. And now we're here able to listen to your experience behind a specific still image during one of your chances traveling around the world. So it's just kind of, this is everything that like just grips me about NFTs. It's all about community. It's all about connection. I mean, real quick, Julius, where are you living right now? Like, where's home base?
I am visiting my sister in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been here for about 4 months, and I'm in the process of applying for a work permit so that I can stay on for longer.
Okay, see, that's fascinating, because if we rewind and zoom out just a tiny bit for 1 second, what would you say the average salary of South Africa is, for example?
Because of lockdown and the current economic and political climate in South Africa, the average salary, advertised salaries that I've seen the last year and a half, is between $700 and $800 US. So it's not as much as people would earn here in the developed world.
And that's so powerful to hear, because this is what the whole purpose of blockchains such as Cardano are about. It's not about, having enough to pay thousands of dollars of gas fees, or even hundreds or even tens of dollars of gas fees, because there's artists out there, there's creators, there's acrobats. Like, what was the name? Did you say Javier?
Javier, yeah.
Yep, exactly. There's artists, creators, there's people out there that they've got something to share, but they cannot be held back by these restrictive barriers to entry. And that's why I'm so passionate about JPG.store, NFTs, and what we're all building here on Cardano specifically, is because this is a global innovation. NFTs are a new era of art and content and sharing that should not be limited by your national average salary or the opportunities that are there. It's all about the 21st century. It's about the age of connectivity. And that's exactly what you're doing here, is you're bringing these places, these moments from different places around the world to us right now. So when I look at this, like, I love that Javier and you met, that you were able to capture this moment, that, his story gets shared, that all of this kind of keeps on paying itself forward. And hopefully people in South Africa, find your work, and that we can spread this, because it is affordable. This is the global current. This can be global. This can be an opportunity, especially with the tokens like World Mobile Token trying to set up internet connectivity in all of Africa. We're going to unlock so much potential art and creativity in worlds that have never been able to access this. And that's kind of what creators like yourself, they're kind of, you're leading the charge. You're showing it is possible, and you're spreading the world from the home base and then bringing it to us here right now. So I love it. I can't wait to hear more. So I can rant, but I'm going to hand the floor back over to you.
I can geek out about the functionality of NFTs or blockchain with you, but I think I will spare our listeners that. But yes, you are 100% correct. This is what NFTs, blockchain, platforms like JPG.store allow creatives like me to do. And for anybody who hasn't yet, I would encourage you to go to Google and find an article by Kevin Kelly called 1000 True Fans. And what he proposes in this essay is he pretty much says that the era of the gatekeepers are gone. Like back in the 90s, if you wanted to release a studio album, you had to go through a record label. And if you wanted a record label deal, you had to be family friendly and you had to fit in this like cookie cutter mold of what it meant to be an artist back in the day. But today, because of the internet, because of the interconnectivity of it all, that's no longer a requirement. All an artist needs to be self-sustainable is 1,000 true fans. And a true fan is somebody, or is classified as somebody who spends $100 on your art or artwork per year. So if you have 1,000 fans, each spending $100 a year, that's $100,000 per annum that you can live off as a creative. And that's a living. That's more than a living. You can have a really rich life with that, but also empower so many others through something like that. And what an honor and what a privilege it is to be part of that generation. I'm super grateful for being alive in this time in humanity, because I am one of the few people that remember what the world was like before the internet. And now I can see sort of like the impact it's having, and I can shape some of the foundation of, how it will look moving forward. So yes, just eternally grateful from my end. And I've encouraged people to read the essay or the article if they want to learn more about that strategy.
And please, everyone, reflect on what he just told, because 1,000 fans. I'm going to be thinking about that concept for a while now, because that is so attainable and it is so real. I mean, when you think about it, it's like the future that we're going into, it's unlimited content. And it's all about connecting peer to peer. And Julius is here and he is sharing this. And that is, it's key. And we're so early that there's so much opportunity for anyone that's inspired to go out there and try. And that's why, like, listening to Julius's stories, listening to the experience that he has and his whole, progression to becoming the artist that he is today, that's exactly why we're here to, learn from. So Julius, keep on going. I love it so far.
Well, I am thankful. All right. So the next piece is one of my favorites. I think if you go to my website, on the landing page, on the homepage, this should be the first image you see. And the reason I like it so much is it's essentially a photo about my essence. I'm not too sure how familiar the audience is with the Mayan calendar. For example, in modern days, we're using the Gregorian calendar, which is like all the months of the year. And from there, we get the zodiacs, like the Gemini, the Pisces, the Libra, and so forth. But the Mayans, who are they are one of the world's oldest and first civilizations, they had their own calendar, which is referred to today as the Mayan calendar. And what happened with me is I discovered this calendar, put in my birth date based on that calendar, and it spat out my zodiac. And what's interesting about the Mayan zodiac is that it makes allowance for both the positive version of a zodiac, but also the negative. So there's a light version and there's a dark version of each respective zodiac sign. And I just admired that construct and that wisdom, from such an ancient civilization so much. So yeah, it's the Mayan calendar that I found really insightful, but my zodiac was that it's called white electric wind. So if you have some time after this chat, you can go to Google and just type in Mayan calendar, white electric wind, and it's going to give you like a 2-3 page breakdown of what that zodiac is. But instead of doing that, let me just give you the key points. The white electric wind is essentially something that embodies the cosmic winds of the universe. Then the cosmic winds are responsible for change. Then it's the sort of like essence that helps galaxies to form and planets to take shape. It's a very powerful and essential part of how the world works. And it's something that's almost intangible. And that is what I aspire to be sort of in this rendition of my life. I want to be an agent for change. I want to help ideas shape. And I feel like because of the photography and how I approach my assignments with my clients, that is in effect what I'm doing, is I am helping them decide who they want to be and asking them or guiding them down deeper and more thoughtful questions like, what is it that I want to leave behind? What is it that I want to teach people? All those kind of like new agey, hippie-ish kind of stuff, but also essential for any sort of spiritual growth and development. So white electric wind for me is essentially a self-portrait of the journey that I'm on. It's me putting up a mirror to myself, to my soul, and trying to get that concept across in a single frame. So that's what it represents. Mechanically, what the photo is it's a 30-second exposure of a fire dancer at a festival that I've just flipped horizontally and in Photoshop tweaked a little bit and created additional layers of it. And I just knew that when I took this photo, that there was something very deep inside of me that resonated with what I had just captured. And it took me a while to analyze and break down that experience and find an editing technique that gets that message across. I've noticed from the work that I've done in this particular collection that a common theme throughout most of my work is that of patience. Taking a picture, almost 8 years ago, 7 years ago, holding on to that, not exactly sure, what it will be used for, but eventually as I grow as an artist and my skills advance, having the tool set to share these emotional constructs with an audience. That's why this is my favorite image, not only in the collection, but probably one of the favorites I've created of all time. The good news is it's already been collected. So that's good news for me, but I don't know, maybe not so good news for listeners.
I don't know, JPG Store can also be a secondary market. People can make offers and all that kind of good things. That opportunity is still available. It's something that's very rare for artists, not being a project and flipping and those kind of things. But I think that there's definitely still appreciation we can share. And when I'm looking at your artwork, on your website, I see that you've got, physical, like framed pieces available and those kind of things. Would that be something that you would probably bring over as well as a concept with your NFTs, or would you rather have them separate worlds?
There is a very good likelihood that I would do a physical piece collection of the NFT collection. I would have to figure out the structure of that. I feel like I would still do a one-of-one in a master print size, and the master prints are in metric. They're about 180 centimeters by 180 or 240 centimeters, so they are really big pieces. And that's something that I feel comfortable with. That being said, people that have already collected the NFT version will be the first to know once that physical piece is available, and most likely I would give them an added benefit, perhaps like a discounted rate or early access or a whitelist or something like that. So there's definitely an advantage to or for collectors to collect the NFT before, or if there ever should be a physical collection. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does a very well job of laying out the land for me, and also for Jason as well. And I see that Christian came up and he had a question. I wanted to give him an opportunity as a photographer to photographer. I think it'd be quite fascinating to hear.
Sure.
Hi, Julius and Prometheus, and thanks, Ally, for the space. And it's amazing hearing your story, Julius, and welcome to the States. I hope you're enjoying your time here. I just wanted to say that last piece that you put up, that you just showed, is absolutely phenomenal. Like, I'm just blown away by it. It looks like a painting, just absolutely surreal.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Christian.
And you're nailing it, Christian. I mean, this is a photograph. Like, if you look at the top right corner, that sharp angled change in momentum, that was, from my understanding, like a fire spinning change in direction. So the fact that like this is one artist capturing another artist's movements, it's fascinating. And this is the whole point of NFTs. It's a whole new medium to capture creativity and then share it with a whole new audience. So once again, like, yeah, I'm blown away that this is a photograph. Like, you would think that this is just something that's just designed digitally, but no, you actually were there in the real world and you captured a moment in time, but you represented it in a different way through technology. So it is beautiful. It's fascinating. And then you add the story of the Mayan calendar and everything. I've traveled to so many Mayan ruins, from Chichen Itza to Teotihuacan and like all of those in, like the Yucatan Peninsula. And it's just, I love it. There's so many layers that go to this medium of art that you're able to capture. So well done. Like, yeah, it's fun. It's fascinating to be able to actually hear your experience behind the screen,
I appreciate that. Thank you, Prometheus. All right. Shall I continue to the next piece? By my count, we still have 3 to go, and we are going on 90 minutes, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time as well. Before I get started, I think the next piece that I will be talking about is called Catalyst. So before I go to that piece, do we have any further questions from the audience?
I did want to be mindful of everyone's time in the space, and I would love to definitely hear more of the stories. I think this is something that we can probably put a bookmark in and probably look forward to another space in covering those stories. I did want to get in a little bit more on diving into like, what does your daily routine kind of look like now that you are stateside, and at the same time, like, what kind of things would you be creating now with the NFT space, or are you thinking to more or less kind of bring more of your story to the chain, I guess, if that makes sense?
Sure. For what it's worth, the narratives to these pieces are available via the link in my bio. So should we finish this call in the next couple of minutes and people would like to learn more, they can do so by clicking on that link and just clicking on the green button that says View Collection with Narratives. To answer your question, I've been self-employed or, running my own shop for almost 10 years now. And I've cultivated a work ethic that encourages me or allows me to work about 10 hours a day. But because I'm in charge of my time, I get to decide how I split those 10 hours. So the day usually starts off with maybe 2 hours of admin and emails and, just seeing what's going on and what collectors or potential clients need from me. And then since being in the States, a huge chunk of my time has gone into securing the O1 artist visa. It is really it's a doable task, but it is extremely time consuming. And until such time that the visa has been issued and approved, that is what the majority of my time is going into. And I'd be happy to discuss that in more detail. But the fact of the matter is I am currently in the States on a visitor's visa, and I have to honor the agreement in which I've sort of stepped into with the US government, and will only be able to accept new assignments, once that visa has been issued. That's how I spend the first 4. So I've got the 2 hours of admin in the morning, 4 hours of talking to whoever I need to talk to about the visa. And then the last 4 hours is usually research, some updates on the website. It's important to note that I've built my website from scratch. What you're seeing on the screen right now is probably the 30th or 40th version of it. And I'm just constantly working on improving it, making sure that it loads faster, that it's more legible, that it just makes sense to whoever is visiting my website or who is interested in my work. So that is essentially how I'm spending my time here stateside. But I can't wait for the situation to have the visa in place and to actually fully enjoy the reality and the economy that the US sort of offers. That's what I really want for Christmas. Is I want an O1 visa.
I wish I was Santa, but I think that's actually a really fascinating aspect to it when we're thinking about people being around the globe, creating things and hearing your specific story. For sure, that's just enlightening to realize how spoiled I am. I've been realizing that more and more each time as I venturing through Web3. People who have voices and who don't, all those kind of aspects have been interesting to navigate through the ecosystem. I did want to open it up to the floor as I see that there's some new faces in the room and some who are have been sticking around. If they had any questions, that they're welcome to come up to the stage and ask away if they'd like. Something that I also wanted to probably bring up to light, because I thought that winter would probably be able to swing in, but I guess it's too cold to come outside. So I think one thing that we've enabled as a marketplace to announce is that not only can you buy artwork with ADA, but you can buy artwork with ETH, Sol, or your regular credit card, fiat money, I guess. I'm not sure exactly how that takes into consideration, but it's quite a fascinating tool nonetheless. And I think that's kind of cool in helping out artists, I think, in a way.
And big up to JPG.store for taking the initiative and, driving these sort of initiatives, because it is just empowering more and more creatives like me, and it's making the NFTs more accessible. Thank you. It's a wonderful community and platform to be a part of.
Prometheus.
And just to put it into perspective so that everyone can kind of understand this wildly dynamic area that we're in with this NFT space, is that when ADA was at its all-time high, $3.10, one of these pieces would be going for over $5,000. And that's kind of what's fascinating, is that we're working on so many exchange rates, so many lively different fluctuating areas of price, that when you're investing during a bear market and when you're like actually supporting artists during these times of low activity and, you know, scared prices, it's a wild discount, especially once you understand where the industry is going, where NFTs are heading. Like Mercedes, BMW, Timex, these massive brands are all filing NFT patents. That when you have an artist that's worked with FIFA, that's done these incredible events, that has a history and everything, and you're just going to see the space continue to grow, we're going to be looking at like these NFT, you know, Twitter spaces like this one right now, and we're going to be thinking like, wow, what an opportunity that was. But only if you actually understand that the genie's out of the bottle. There's no putting it back in. It's all unleashed. Nobody can shut this down. Cardano is so decentralized that it's going to live forever at this current pace. It's just like the momentum that's going. So when we have a speaker, when you have an artist like Julius, it is a treat. Bear markets are beautiful because we get to have these kind of intimate spaces where we can actually have a chance to talk and like hear from Julius. So Julius, like, I don't know what time, like Ally, she's going to be the mastermind behind all of this, and she understands the timing, but this has been a treat. And I think only in hindsight will we actually understand how special this is, especially with a career that I can only expect you have going forward. You're such a creative mind. I only know that this is just the beginning of a new era, you know? So I've been having a blast during all this, and I just have to say thanks to Ally and JPG.store and Julius just to even be involved. And once again, guys, like Julius's piece, let me make sure I got the title right. I think it was Follow Your Heart. Guys, you guys are invested in Cardano. Not only that, that's a niche space. You're in Cardano NFTs. That's niche upon niche. You've already followed your hearts. There's something about this art, these space NFTs, Cardano, that's speaking to you. So you're already thinking for yourselves, and I love that. You're right here in the Twitter space with us. So as far as I'm concerned, you're already following your heart, which is exactly what I've heard Julius say in all his messaging. So Julius, like, I'm gonna, step back for a second, but man, I've loved hearing your story.
Thank you, Prometheus, and it's an honor to be able to share it with you and those in the space. And while you have mentioned all the wonderful benefits that Cardano and JPG.store has for collectors and those in the art world, as a creative, I just want to add onto that, saying that the royalty component of the NFTs is an absolute game changer for artists and artists like me, because now, as the work lives on, even after I do, there is a real legacy scenario at play here, where a part of the resale value can go back to my foundation or my family. And that's something that I feel should also be emphasized about the blockchain technology. It's a wonderful technology, and the fact that that has become a reality is just wow. I think that might be one of the big reasons why I decided to come back in this era. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there.
You have nailed it. I mean, when you think about like the Mona Lisa, for example, if we want to get cheesy and like as iconic as it gets, imagine if that piece, every time it was distributed, was still paying royalties to the family of the original artist. And that's what NFTs are enabling, is that when we've got these names, these pieces that are going to be shared for time immortal, like all of those royalties keep on going to where the original artist actually intended. I mean, I might be incorrect in this, but I believe it was, I think Picasso didn't even gain his fame until after he died. If this kind of technology was around, his whole lineage would be benefiting with the technology that NFTs provide. So I'm blown away that the industry is starting to like get rid of royalties, but I am so in agreement with Julius that royalties attached to digital scarcity is the future. This is what's going to put art and artists and creators back as one of the #1 top professions. No more just getting, like abused by corporations, just paying on Fiverr. No, this is like the start of something big. It's going to be the art renaissance, the way I see it. So I love the way that you're thinking about this, Julius. I love it.
Yeah. Thank you.
A fascinating thing as well, because I was in a different space a couple days ago that was talking about, artists creating so much more money or being more valuable once they're gone. I wonder how that narrative is going to go. Not to say, I want to wish such a thing on someone who's in the ecosystem, to test it out and see, are you going to skyrocket to the highest volume or not? It'd just be interesting, because that was just the narrative. You made it when you were gone. Here, you make it as long as you're here every single day. So I don't know, it's quite enlightening to see that. And people are actually realizing with Twitter, like, you should also take some time to go outside and touch grass. So hearing you mention that your workflow was more of a 10-hour kind of day, it's relieving for me, as everyone says that Web3 is 24/7. It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Definitely. I think one of the biggest takeaways that I've had from my career is the importance of balance. When I am not putting in my 10 hours in front of the computer or my desk, I am out practicing yoga, I'm out meditating, I'm out walking. And that is so important to my well-being. It's really become such a big part of who I am. And I would encourage anybody in this space to be more tuned into and more mindful of those activities, because, all the ADA in the world, all the money in the world can't buy back your health. It can't buy you back a healthy body or, a life. So be mindful, take care of yourselves, and, try to find whatever resembles a middle path for you on your journey.
Wise words indeed. And with that being the note, I do think that I would like to get ready to wrap up the space, as I want to be mindful of people who probably still have dinner, presents to wrap, presents to shop for, I'm sure. If there's anything in any consultation, NFTs are still available. The store is still up and running. So I would highly advise, not financial advice, but check out JPG Store's new functionalities where you can gift for a friend, you can gift for yourself. There's nothing wrong with that either. And you can do it in any kind of form of payment between Ethereum, Solana, and of course my favorite is ADA, of course, nonetheless.
Of course. Yeah, and from a creator's point of view, I would just like to point out that this is most likely the cheapest you will ever find this artwork, hopefully. So, just mentioning that. And then I also want to close out the chat with wishing you all, Ally, Prometheus, everybody at JPG Store, everybody listening, wishing you all a blessed festive season. Take care of yourselves and each other. And, it is the season to be grateful. It's the season to be thankful. So, yeah, be responsible out there, have fun, and let's connect with each other in the new year, recharged and, ready to just take on the NFT world post-bear market. I hope I said that correctly.
I think my tarot card says the same thing. I look forward to post-bear market. I do enjoy the peace, but bear market has been long enough for me. But Prometheus, I saw that you were going to chime in, and then we'll get ready to shut her down.
I mean, you nailed it. Bear markets are for builders. This is the time where the people that actually care are building, they're establishing their foundation, and this is all cyclical. We know how the fiat world is going. We know how they're printing. We know how everything is going in the world of the legacy, economics. So right now, like Julius said, this is the cheapest, probably one of the best prices you can get from someone that's been featured with FIFA, with these massive organizations doing art for years. And there's a pretty good potential that we could see Ada, like change price back to its all-time high would be a dream. But the future is going to be something that surprises us all. So when you think about these prices in ADA, that's one thing. But when you think about the conversion to the US dollar, especially the way we see it all going, it's going to be a different game fast. We're going to be looking back at this Twitter space and we're going to be thinking, wow, these pieces were available at this price US dollar, and now an ADA is worth X amount. That's when it's going to really click. And, I've been fortunate enough to be in the space long enough that I can already see that right now. But we're still early, so it's really exciting looking forward. And Julius, I can only imagine you've got a long career ahead of you. You've only got, you've already got this spark inside of you. I can already feel it kind of like spreading. That's the whole reason I chose the name Prometheus, handing that fire down from the gods to make sure that humans have the right and the ability to, make their own best. So, Julius, I love what you're doing, and I hope the listeners here really appreciate, bear markets are beautiful. You just kind of have to know where to look, where it's coming, and where you can actually fit in. So, Julius, I love the message.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, JPG Store, for giving me the platform to share my story and my message. And, I wish everybody just an abundance of peace and beauty and understanding. Life is for living, so go out and live it.
Thank you, Julius. Thank you for joining, and thank you to everyone who came in to listen, to those who are going to be tuning in after the fact. Talking about where to look, you can find us at jpg.store. You can also find us on Instagram. We are now live on Reddit as well. And there'll be more updates and more, news to share here and there as we go into the new year. With that also being mentioned, with this JPG Creators space, this is a space for highlighting our smaller creators in the ecosystem. If you have any questions to be a part of it, feel free to reach out to me. My personal account is down below at AllyIllustrated, but if you can't reach me there, you can always find a ticket and someone will get a chance to hunt me down to find you and help you out. And also, Launchpad has also opened up. It's available for application all time, anytime that you want. And it does have a creator circle section in there as well. So again, if you have any questions, just let us know and we'll be happy to answer them. And with that, I wish everyone a happy holidays and a happy new year. We'll see you guys soon.
All right. See you soon. Thank you, Ally.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.